So, hello everyone. I'm Michal Katz. I head the investment and corporate banking division at Mizuho Americas, and I am incredibly pleased to introduce Chemi Peres, who is the co-founding partner of Pitango, the largest venture capital fund in Israel, founded in 1993. He's also the chairman of the board of the Peres Center Peace and Innovation, which is a not-for-profit organization advancing the vision of Israeli-Palestinian peace, founded in 1996 by his father, Shimon Peres, the beloved former Prime Minister of Israel. Chemi also serves on the board of Social Finance Israel, which promotes the flow of capital towards solving social issues in Israel, and most recently co-founded and steers the COVID-19 Relief Israeli Solidarity Fund. Lastly, Chemi serves on the boards of numerous Pitango portfolio companies, including Via Transportation, Tabula, Ven.City, Duda, Totango, and Radwin. And prior to his career in venture capital, Chemi held leadership roles across the software industry and was an advisor to Israel's aerospace industry after having served for 10 years as a pilot in the Israeli Air Force. I am pleased to welcome Chemi to the Mizuho Speaker Series today to talk about his admirable professional journey, as well as what lies ahead for the VC investing in Israel, but also more broadly. So Chemi, thank you so much for sitting with us today. And maybe I'll ask you to start by talking a little bit about your journey and then maybe share your perspectives on entrepreneurship and the VC industry broadly.
Sure. Thank you very much, Michal, and thank you for lending the stage for me and Pitango. So in the last 30 years, I've been managing Pitango Venture Capital, which is the largest venture capital group in Israel. Our fund, actually, our management group has basically 3 funds that we run in parallel. We are now in the process of raising $1 billion for the trio funds. We have a growth fund, number 3, which we're raising $500 million for. And we have Pitango First, number 9, which is focusing on early stage deep technology companies in Israel. We're raising for that fund $300 million. An additional $200 million we are raising for our second health technology fund. Basically, we invested until now in close to 300 companies over the years. We have 250 global investors, financial and strategic investors, and we're very proud to have Mizuho as part of a distinguished group of investors, not only from Japan and Asia Pacific, but from around the world. Basically, we're now, as I said, in the process of raising $1 billion. Let me start maybe by sharing with you our worldview, global trends, and then I can talk a little bit about where Israel is at this stage and what's the road ahead. And then, of course, if there's time, I'll be happy to answer any questions or add any additional information that you may need. So in general, what we see is a combination of several trends that are coming together to change our world as we know it today. The first trend is the digital transformation, which is now hitting every industry around the world. It started, of course, with communication, but led also to other industries. And in the recent years, we've seen mobility, and we saw healthcare. We saw the financial services world, prop tech. We're seeing now food. We're seeing now agriculture, energy. Almost every industry around the world is being transformed with the digital transformation. And as a result, most of the companies and organizations today in the world are adopting new technologies and new platforms and data in order to be much more productive and much more resilient. So there is a demand that is growing for technology across industries and around the world. That's the first trend that we see. The second one is what happened in the recent years with COVID-19. We actually saw a very significant rate of adoption by individuals across the world. People for the first time use the internet to get healthcare services, to learn, to convene for conferences, to shop. And actually, the adoption rate has been significantly advanced and deepened around the world, and that created also demand for technology and innovation. Not only that, we saw the change in the work style, work from home, and we've seen the trend of the Great Resignation and the Quiet Resignation, which transform into the notion that a lot of people are leaving their positions right now in many industries and are shifting towards becoming part of the workforce in the technology sector. I call it the greatest human immigration without moving physically. But that trend will take a few years before many people will gain knowledge and will be able to be integrated in the technology sector. Meanwhile, we're seeing that there is a scarcity of labor force in many areas, from supply chain, of course, and transportation. And we see it also in hospitality, we see it in industry, we see it in agriculture. And as a result, there is an inflation of scarcity. Prices are going up. And those of you who have been trying to get a flight ticket or hotel or get a new car can experience it firsthand. As a result, of course, what we've seen in the recent few months is a reduction in valuation. That we saw the rise of valuation in the recent years. That trend is going down now. And as a matter of fact, what we've seen in the last 10 years is we've seen that capital is actually trading liquid assets to be invested in non-liquid assets of growth, because the interest rates were very low. Now that the interest rates are coming up, what we see is, again, movement of capital from illiquid growth assets into more liquid assets, and in some cases, distressed assets, which is causing reduction of fundraising and investments in companies. As a result, of course, valuations are going down, and we see it in the stock market. We see it also in the primary market. So inflation of scarcity, in my view, will last for a few years until the completion of the transformation of many workers. And instead of them, there will be more automation in a lot of areas where we see scarcity right now. That is basically what we see on the world. And on one hand, growing demand for technology and innovation to exit the financial crisis of the COVID-19. And on the other hand, what we see is the rise of interest rate and scarcity of inflation, which are working a little bit in an opposite direction on that. What do we see in Israel? In Israel, we have been investing in venture capital for the last 30 years. Still, this is a relatively young ecosystem. It does not have the tradition that Silicon Valley had of investing in venture capital for tens of years, if not more than that. But our ecosystem is growing and is getting more experience and better, and the interest around the world to invest in Israel continues to grow, because Israel is not innovating for itself. Israel is innovating for the world. While physically we're a tiny little country that has no market for physical goods, when it comes to the digital space, Israel is quite a big market. A lot of Israeli companies, the 7,000 startups that we have in Israel, are leveraging the internet, and they're spending a lot of money on distribution, on marketing, and other areas of investments. And of course, the big companies around the world that have presence in Israel are indicating a growing business with Israeli companies in the digital sphere. In the beginning, in the 90s, when the first Israeli startup companies started and there were the first venture capital funds in Israel, we had the disadvantage of going into global markets. We were far away in terms of culture. Our culture is very different from the global markets. We had a disadvantage of language. We had a disadvantage of being far away. And it was very hard for Israeli companies to build themselves for the long run. There was not enough sufficient capital, and our ability to reach customers around the world was limited. So initially, Israeli companies really focused on developing technologies and sell them to big companies so they can take the products into the global markets. So initially, the culture in Israel was developing around exit. You innovate and you exit, you innovate and you exit. And there was no real future to grow a real venture capital and entrepreneurship business if you do those cycles of innovation and M&A. You needed to build companies. And so what happened is that with the rise of the internet and the connectivity to other areas around the world and the flow of information, the disadvantage of living on a little island remote from the world has been disappearing. And you can actually say that Israel is no longer an island. It's more like a ship that can sail the ocean and compete on a global basis. So the second phase of entrepreneurship and venture really started after the crisis, the dot-com bubble burst and the telecom crisis in 2000, 2001. And what we started to see, Israeli companies are starting to build businesses and looking for product market fit. That took the ecosystem about 10 years to start and build companies, but still the scale was not there. We had an opportunity in the last decade where capital was trading from liquid assets to growth. And in the last 10 years, what we've seen is that the level of investment in Israeli technology companies grew from 2.5 billion a year to 25 billion in 2021, which was an outlier year. But still, even today, after the crisis, still the amount of dollars that will be invested in Israel is much higher than what was in 2020 and in 2019 and previous years. So it's not disappearing. There is a correction, but still Israel enjoys from inflow of capital. During the last 10 years, we saw a phenomena of creating unicorns. And the notion was that we need to grow our companies fast, even at the cost of losing money. And 102 Israeli companies during that period of time earned the status of unicorns, which is quite significant. Many of them had revenues of hundreds of millions of dollars and even billions of dollars. So it was not only based on value creation, but based on real businesses. But it was still not enough. And what we see today is a shift in the culture to grow businesses in a sustainable way. It's not enough to reach a unicorn position and become a company with a market cap of over $1 billion, but the mission statement now is to earn the valuation by creating value, by reaching revenues across $1 billion a year and grow and scale the companies as fast as possible. Now, when you live in an area that is focusing on innovation, one has to be sure to be able to do two things. The first thing is know when new technologies are starting and new markets are starting. And usually little countries like Israel were lagging behind the center of activity like Silicon Valley. But with the evolution of networks and information, we closed that gap. So time-wise, Israel is ripe to launch companies on time and to identify new technologies and new opportunities and not be lagging behind, but rather be able to compete on a global basis. Once you close the time gap, the second challenge is how you scale a company to a level of companies that we see today around the world, especially in the US. We already have companies that have a market cap of more than $1 trillion and even more than $2 trillion, where the largest Israeli technology companies are still in the tens of millions of dollars. We did not even cross $100 million. And the reason is that scaling up in a little ecosystem like Israel is quite challenging. But we are getting there. We are breaking glass ceilings one after the other. And we're looking for opportunities to scale our businesses. And one of the opportunities that I wanted to share with you is the normalization process that is going through the Middle East, specifically the Abraham Accords, which are bringing Israel together with the Gulf states and more specifically the Emirates. And we're looking for partnerships that will be able to allow the startup nation to scale together with our partners in the region. And our partners in the region have access to markets that we do not have access to. That includes Arab countries and Muslim countries and countries in near East Asia. It includes companies and organizations in Africa. And our ability to partner with our friends now through the Abraham Accords is opening a door for us that never existed. We also saw during the last 2 years that Israeli companies are no longer a target for acquisition. Of course, there will always be acquisitions, but more and more Israeli companies became acquirer and growing also inorganically by acquiring either Israeli or non-Israeli companies. And the number of transactions is on the rise, which allows Israeli companies to continue and scale. Another thing that is helping us to scale up is our ability to adapt to the concept of ESG, which is making our companies much more resilient, much more attractive to investors, to partners, and of course to talent that is looking not only for innovation in necessities, but also innovation with purpose. And it attracts a lot of talent to come and work with our companies and scale them up together. Of course, during this time, a lot of companies are focusing on capital efficiency, on extending the runway. And basically, let me say that when I look at the world and when I look at Israel in the next 10 years, I see unprecedented opportunities. As Michal mentioned, I'm not only running Pitango, I'm also the chairman of the Peres Center for Peace and Innovation, where we are implementing my father's work going forward. And my father have told me that basically in the world, what we see the most important transformation is that we're living an age of wars. We're leaving an old world behind us and we're entering a new world of science and technology. So greatness is not necessarily coming from physical goods or from assets or from land or natural resources. It actually comes from our ability to create and innovate and use our brain power. It comes from science and technology. And that transformation is something that we see quite clearly in the recent decades. First and foremost, we see that the greatest companies in the world are technology companies, not oil and gas, not chemistry, not construction, and not finance. That's the first indication. The second indication that we saw is that the wars, as we are ending the age of wars, we're entering an age of global threats. And the first one, of course, was the pandemic, which hit all of us. And the way to deal with the new threats is actually through solidarity, through collaboration, and through developing new technologies to be able to come up with vaccination, with drugs, and share information how to deal with those risks. Ahead of us, of course, is climate change and many other global risks. So my father told me also that we are actually paying taxes twice because we are not leaving the old world behind us fast enough and we are not entering the new world quickly enough. As a result, when you look on television screens today, you can actually see the old world and new world coming together. On one hand, the old world is the war between Russia and Ukraine, which makes no sense. It only causes misery and it kills the energy market and it kills the economy and creates a lot of suffering and nothing will be gained. But at the same time, it becomes unacceptable in the world and everybody is watching that war in real time and take action, not only states, but also individuals and businesses that are taking a stand for the first time in human history, and they are becoming, so to speak, participant in the response to violence and the response to a war. So I'm not sure it's a good thing for Russia in the long run, but for sure, wars are becoming tougher and tougher. One of the beautiful phrases that my father had is that he said that television makes tyranny impossible and democracy intolerable. So this is exactly what we see. And at the same time, when we open television, we also see the global threats. We see what is happening with climate change. We see what is happening with the pandemic. So we are in the midst of a transformation from an old world to a new world. We are seeing a transformation from a world of physical goods to a world of software and artificial intelligence. We're seeing a world where greatness will come from our brain power, and therefore nations can be strong and can be compensating for everything that they suffer scarcity from, either energy or food or water. They can create and gain those scarcities by technology and innovation. You can take water and desalinate it. You can harvest energy from the sun, and everything is done with science and technology. So perhaps we're entering a world where there will be only winners, because you don't have to win over somebody in order to become strong. And we're living a world of winners and losers and entering a world of winners only. I think in that context, Israel probably is the role model of a state that is building itself with science and technology and innovation. When you look at the history of Israel, which is going to celebrate its 74th anniversary quite soon, you can identify the journey of Israel as a journey of innovation. When my father came to the state of Israel at the age of 11, he told me that there was nothing here, no food, no water. You could not grow any agriculture because the land was refusing. We had no water, we had no energy. But still, we managed to create a state which has a GDP per capita, which is now reaching $60,000 a year, where we still have parts of our society that are not participating in the economic gain. And you can see that what we have done in Israel was done only with science and technology. When we settled down, we started to innovate in water technologies, in food and agriculture, in energy, in order to settle down. When we needed to protect ourselves, we again turned to the brain power, and we create nuclear technologies, and we created cybersecurity, and we created new platforms such as Iron Dome that are very well known around the world. We created a defense shield that is made of brain power. When we needed to create our economy was imploding in the 80s. Because you cannot sustain an economy when you don't have nothing to export and you are not a market. So again, our economy is built on brain power. Today we have 7,000 startup companies attracting tens of billions of dollars a year, exporting more than almost 50% of our export is around technology and innovation. And hundreds of global companies are coming to Israel to invest and to participate in the world of innovation. So we became strong militarily, and we became strong economically based on our ability to innovate and to adopt science and technology to the use of our platforms. And now I believe we're entering a new era within the Middle East history, where we are starting to normalize our relationships and basically offering innovation as a platform for peace. Basically, with technology and innovation, we can solve a lot of problems. We can create more things available to all of us, from energy to water to food, and we can share it, and we can work together in solidarity and address the challenges that are aiming to attack all of us at once. So I'm very optimistic with regards to the next 10 years. I'm optimistic twofold. First, because I see the demand for innovation, and I see the transformation to the new age taking place in front of our eyes. And secondly, I'm optimistic by choice, because my father always said that optimists and pessimists die the same way, but they live different lives. And if you choose to be optimistic, then you choose to be able to imagine and to create and to work hard, knowing that at the end of the day, your vision will be realized and your dream will come true. So the next 10 years, I believe, will be years where the world economy will see recovery. productivity will grow because of automation, because of the movement of human beings towards technology and science. We will see wars becoming unacceptable. We will see global threats being addressed and challenged by all of us together, working in collaboration and solidarity. And therefore, I'm a believer that the next 10 years are going to be unprecedented in terms of human history. And of course, great opportunity for technology companies, for innovation centers. And within these remarks, of course, Israel is playing a significant role in the region and hopefully on the arena of global innovation. So I've tried to end here. And if there's any questions, I'm happy, of course, to answer any questions you might have.
First of all, Chemi, thank you so much. This was for the insights and for the, I would say, sprinkling optimism in what sometimes can really seem like pretty grim and headlines out there. And particularly, I loved your comments about a world of winners, and you talked about solidarity driving further innovation, particularly when there has been a threat to the globalization that so many of us have been beneficiaries of. I want to say whatever it is that you're drinking, I'd like some of that as well, because I do believe actually in all that optimism. And I love the comments between living a world of living as an optimist versus a pessimist. Greatly appreciate the insights. Maybe just to kind of double click on a couple of the comments that you have made. You mentioned valuations at the outset of the conversation. There has been around 3.6 trillion raised by private equity firms, infrastructure funds, the venture funds, real estate funds, etc. A lot of money out there sitting on the sidelines, looking to deploy it and put it to work. There's also been a reset in valuation, which is making many of the assets more affordable. Maybe kind of thinking about Pitango specifically, when you are pursuing an entrepreneur or a company, what do you guys feature or talk about as the Pitango value add or differentiator as a partner of choice for your investments?
So thank you very much for the question. First and foremost, I'm very proud to say that there was a survey among entrepreneurs around the world, and Pitango was elected as the number one choice for entrepreneurs to get Pitango invested in their companies in the state of Israel. And we're ranked number 33 around the world. And it's not so bad because we're not really investing around the world. So I'm very proud of saying it. I think, our investment philosophy is really to focus on 5 things. We have the 4 T's and the I. The 4 T's are basically team. We want to see a very strong team. We want to see a very significant theme of investment, big markets. We want to see terms that are reasonable, and we want to see technology which is unique. And the I, of course, is we analyze the impact of the companies that we invest in. And valuations are going down, but I can tell you that most of the companies are now undervalued. They were overvalued, no doubt about that. A lot of investments were made in high valuations, but a lot of companies are quickly closing that gap because they grow very fast and they continue to grow. And so valuation, in my mind, is at least in terms of Pitango, we did not play in the risky areas of overinflated valuations. We stayed below the waves under the current, and we were quite disciplined on that. So even with the correction, we still are showing quite good performances. So I think in our business, you need to be also very disciplined and very modest. You need to be very careful, and you need to choose right your companies in order to scale up.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Maybe turn it a little bit about us. As you know, Mizuho is not only one of the largest banks in Japan, but we are one of the largest banks in the world by assets. What do you think Japanese companies can learn from the success of Israel's VC experience? and maybe share some examples of business cooperation between Pitango companies and Japanese companies, or any type of collaboration which you have noticed to have actually been successful.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great question. First of all, we have Japanese investors for the last 25 years. Itochu was the first investor to join Pitango and been investing in each and every fund ever since. We're talking about 11 funds over the years. Itochu was also a partner, just to give you an idea of kind of collaboration. Pitango invested in a company called VIA, which is changing transportation. And Itochu became a significant investor in the company, but more importantly, opened the Japanese market for VIA. So we try, besides the investments, to create value by strategic partnerships between our investors. And of course, it goes around many sectors. When I look back at Israel and Japan in the last 25 years, the evolution. So in the early days, as I described earlier, most of the Israeli companies developed technology and were hoping to be sold to strategic partners. It was very difficult to work with Japanese companies on that idea because the culture was a little bit different, because in Japan, a lot of companies had tradition and they were built for the long run. They did not really, they were not really interested in transactions, in buying small companies from Israel. But now that we're scaling our businesses, we're looking for partners and not acquirers. And so the openness to collaborate has grown significantly. And what we see is also a lot of overlap between the kind of things that we invest in and the kind of things that Japan is interested in. And we have a lot to learn from Japan. So, for example, on the healthcare side, Pitango is heavily investing in health technologies. And in Japan, longevity is significant and aging population is significant. And a lot of companies are looking for technologies and solutions to follow the transformation of the healthcare market. The same is going with mobility. Japan has tremendous industrial companies, and those areas are going through digital transformation. And Israel is investing in digital transformation, in mobility, in Industry 4.0. And of course, across the industry, the need for cybersecurity and security is growing as well. So there are a lot of areas where Israeli companies and Japanese companies are able to collaborate and cooperate. Our base of investors in Japan has grown, and we do have companies such as Omron, Mitsui Fudosan. Of course, we have Mizuho Bank and some others that have joined us. And we are planning to increase the base of partnerships and investments between Japan and Israel. We work with a team that is based in Japan, and they help us monitor our relationship and partnership with significant companies in Japan. At the same time, we are working at the Peres Center for Peace and Innovation. We have just launched a very interesting partnership. It's actually a board that consists of members of the great industry in Japan with some of our technology partners, groups like Checkpoint, Adama, KLA, and others. And we're actually holding our first dinner. COVID stopped our activity, but we're convening in Israel on November 20, and we're going to meet for the first time face-to-face a delegation from Japan and our group in Israel. And we're looking forward to foster more partnerships and collaboration between Israeli companies and Japanese companies. So we're very proud, and this is a very important part of the world for the Israeli technology and for us as Pitango.
That's terrific. I'm certainly looking forward to continue collaborating in many different ways. Maybe just a couple of wrap-up questions. You've been incredibly generous with your time. switching gears a little bit, perhaps towards leadership, because you mentioned one of the T's is team. And the last few years have definitely been unprecedented, as not just the world, but leaders of companies have needed to navigate social crisis, an economic crisis, a health crisis. What skills do you believe are critical or most important for leading companies in evolving, changing, dynamic times? Pandemic was for one, but now we're entering into a period of a downturn as well, a recession, so to speak.
I think that leaders, CEOs, and business leaders need to understand that in the world, governance is changing, power of governments is being reduced, their ability to take care of the future of human beings is marginal to where they were before. And with that, responsibility on the shoulders of entrepreneurs and business leaders is increasing. Companies are becoming bigger, they are becoming global. And the change is that while governments are being elected once every few years, companies are being elected every day by their customers and partners. So you have to understand that you are scrutinized all the time, that you have responsibility, that you're not just managing, but you're actually leading, that the terms of revenues, growth, and profit are now expanded into many other areas. That you need to take care of societies, you need to take care of the environment, you need to be transparent in the way you run the business. And your ability to impact is sometimes more significant even than ministers and heads of states. So we have to understand it, we have to recognize it, and we have to assume responsibilities. And we have to follow the concept that is being offered to us by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and use ESG as tools in order to guide ourselves through creating impact around those sustainable development goals. It's not just business anymore, it's becoming part of the world leadership.
Incredible. So, Chemi, you have really imbued in us so many phenomenal messages today, starting from your optimism about the next decade and then some, the kind of ending of the wars, and then intolerance of wars and the global threats. And I think this was very much needed from us here at Mizuho in the financial services industry and the world more broadly. So really grateful for the time you spent with us today. Grateful for the insights. We are grateful for the partnership with Pitango, and looking forward to your continued success. And looking forward to seeing you in person. So we don't do the next sit down over a Zoom, but whether it be in Israel or in Tokyo or New York. So greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Toda rabba.
Toda, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Bye.